Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is Finding and Interpreting Census Records. My name is Charlie Taylor. I'm one of the CE consultants at KDLA. So I'll just be helping out on the backside of today's webinar, facilitating. Our presenters for today are Rosemary Mazzaros and Katherine Pinavaria from Western Kentucky University, and we extend a big welcome to them. They are very generous with their time and talents and knowledge on these genealogy-related topics. We love having them, and they're great presentations. If you have any questions for them, go ahead and chat that in as we go along. Any technical issues, please chat that in as well, and I'll do my best to help you out with those. And it looks like, I'm going to go ahead and move away from the poll, but it looks like most people in the class are considering themselves to be beginners, the vast majority of you. A couple of advanced people, and then one person that refuses to be labeled, which is, we respect that. We respect that. Let me change the screen over, and I'll turn it over to you all. I also just wanted to mention that you will be able to download your own copy of these slides at the end of today's presentation. So I think that's it. So I'll turn it over to you, Rosemary and Katherine.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Well, I'm Katherine.
And I'm Rosemary.
Just so you can keep that clear. We're going to talk about census records of a variety of kinds. Please feel free to write in with your questions. We'll try to address them during the show, but we've definitely left some time at the end for questions. So we really like that interactivity. First slide, my publisher makes me do this, so I'm sorry you've seen it before, you've heard it. Yes, KP, we know you have a book called Genealogy, A Practical Guide for Librarians. So if you run into Charles Harmon of Roman and Littlefield, please tell him I did say in my presentation that I bought the book. Okay, here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to tell you what information you'll find in the census, how you can access census records, what search strategies you would want to use when you can't find someone in the census, and what other resources are available for census records and research. And some of you have seen our presentations before. You know, I always say this. We are historians. We are not just creating a family tree. Genealogists and family history researchers are historians creating history where it doesn't already exist. And to do that well, you want to make sure that you are conducting a reasonably exhaustive search. That language comes from the professional genealogy standards. And that means if you can't find somebody right away, don't give up. Use all the strategies you can get your hands on to track that person down. If you know a record exists, keep at it until you find it. Kind of a second motto for historians, without proof, it isn't truth. Okay, what you are doing is not just collecting the information, but you want to collect the records themselves. You want those original records, or a scan of them. And what you do with those records is you analyze them, and from that you derive your evidence and proof for the history that you're writing. Okay, so finding census records it's not just about looking at it and seeing, oh, okay, I see the information, I'm going to copy that information into my family tree and move on. You want to download the original record and keep it and work with it.
Okay, so what information is in the census? Let's look. The census is taken every 10 years. Now, this is mandated by the Constitution itself. The reason why it was taken every 10 years is the country back then needed information. First of all, they needed to form the Congress, and the House of Representatives is based on how many people live in a state. So they did a carrot and stick approach. The carrot was, if you have a certain number of people in your state, you get more representatives in the Congress. However, the stick part is you also get a larger share of the Revolutionary War debt. So that's how the first census was meant to operate. And the data that they took is summary data, but they also took names. Now, the names and other personal information are kept secret until 72 years has passed. So 1940 census data just came out in 2012. Many of us are not in the census data yet to be seen and examined. They used to think that 72 years was long past a lifetime of a person. However, we know better than that now, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't changed it, so it's still 72 years before the names and other information are released. However, the census is mandated. The data must be released within a year. Okay, this is a page from the first census of the United States taken in 1791.
This is the data.
This is the data. This is a summary of the data. Notice, even though printing was well established for 300 years, they still wrote in and even made the columns, drawing them in for the states. At that time, remember 1790, that Kentucky was a district of Virginia. So we didn't become a state till 1792. So we appear in the 1800 census as a separate state. Also, West Virginia is incorporated in Virginia until 1861. So your census searching is enhanced by how much history you know. Okay, what was in these censuses? Well, as you saw from 1790, not much. Only the household heads were named. That means males, usually white males. Women, children, and slaves were not even in there. They weren't even counted. Other residents, including slaves, were, as I said, just numbered. And the earliest of these censuses were taken by a U.S. Marshal on horseback. He rode to your farm or your house and asked you these questions. Okay, this is on the inside of the 1790 census, and notice it says names of heads of families, and then there's the data being written in. Even those little dots across the column were all hand penciled in. Amazing. The population schedules every 10 years starting in 1790, and the names were not released for 72 years. So as I said, 2012 is when we got 1940. 1950, which many of us will be in, won't be there until 2022. Some special schedules were taken, agriculture and mortality and even slave, in 1810, 20, and more regularly between 1850 and 1930. The special schedules, 1810, 1890, and past 1900 are mostly destroyed. The National Archives microfilm collection covers only 40 years of that, 1840 to 1880. So we don't have all the data. And here's the rule. Generally speaking, the further back you go, the less information is available. In 1830, they finally got around to using a printed form instead of handwriting all this.
When was printing invented? In the 1400s, but yeah. Oh yeah, some idiot had the job of penciling all those lines in.
And of course, 1830, we were growing. We had quite a few more states, so they finally used printed forms. And finally, in 1840, they asked if a person was a Revolutionary War pensioner or a pensioner's widow. In 1850, that was the first time they named every non-slave resident, and they first used slave schedules to get information. 1860, that has suffered the most damage with the exception of the loss of the 1890 census.
Which I'm going to talk about.
Which we will talk about. Now, one thing about this 1850 census is not as much information on it as in the 1870, which would come to next.
Yep. This is
the 1870 census. This is important because it was the first time that they asked whether the parents were foreign or native born. So you can see the immigration then picking up. It was the first time that they attempted to list everyone in the population. Now, still, even today with all the technology, everyone is not listed in the census. They can't get to everyone. Sometimes they're out of town. Sometimes the people duck the census taker. They don't send in the form. They're homeless, even though they make attempts to go out and try to get people who are homeless, living under bridges and so forth. But it's not possible to get every last person in the U.S.
Yeah.
In 1880, that was the first time they listed street names and house numbers, marital status, and how the residents of a household were connected to each other, because many extended families lived together under the same roof. Some were in-laws and maybe had the same last name, but you didn't know if they were the sister or the sister-in-law. Also boarders. My family, plenty of boarders living with us. So this tells you a lot more. It's really rounding out the information on the folks in the census.
Okay, moving on to the 1890 census, which I don't know if all of you know this, but the 1890 census does not exist. It was destroyed, not on purpose. First, the good things about it. It was the first census to ask about Civil War service, so it would have been really useful to have, but if it hadn't gotten destroyed. It was also the first to ask for racial self-identification, which they've continued, and it was the only one that ever asked about people defective in some way, and I'm really sorry that we don't have this one, because my dad's family was here, many of them were here before 1890, and they would have been in that census, and hearing loss runs in my family, and I really would have liked to know if anybody said, you know, yeah, we have a problem with hearing this family. That would have helped me figure that one out. Just a little background on that 1890 census. What happened was the enumerators went around, asked people for the information, and then they wrote the information down. Then those pages were shipped to Washington, where they were copied by some hardworking person onto kind of clean sheets. And those are what you look at when you see census pages. You don't see the original notes by the enumerators. And then those pages are used to tabulate the results, which are published later, and that's when they're going to kind of put the data together, say X number of households have, you know, 2 dogs or whatever. They don't really ask that, do they?
No, they don't.
And then after they did this copying and tabulation, which could have taken, you know, several months, all the sheets and notes were just put into cardboard boxes and stuck on some open shelves in the Commerce Department basement, the Commerce Department was in charge of storing the census. Really, because what else would you do with these, you know, precious national documents, which no other copy existed? Look at my little sad face. Yeah, you know where this is going. Okay, so in January 1921, a fire started in that basement, and within a few hours, the fire was out, but the 1890 census was essentially destroyed. And the biggest issue was there was a lot of pages that didn't get destroyed by the fire, but they sat in that sooty water for like days till they figured out, you know, how to deal with this problem, and the insurance company had to come in. You know, now we would immediately do damage control and preservation efforts, but they had no plan in place for that. It never occurred to them that this could happen. I don't know why. If you want to read the whole story of the 1890 census getting destroyed in the fire, there's a really good article at the National Archives. I put the URL there. It's a 3-part article, and it gives you all the kind of contemporary newspaper stories and responses to this. So sadly, if you're looking for family around 1890, you're going to need some substitutes, and Rosemary's going to talk about something like that in a bit. The one good thing that came out of the 1921 fire that destroyed the 1890 census is that it prompted the effort to get the funding going and get the building going for a national archives, which we still have in Washington. It's a beautiful building not far from the Capitol, and it opened, you know, 23 years later after the fire, but better late than never, and that's still where our most precious national documents are stored. They don't store every single thing there because they have lots of storage facilities that are better climate controlled now, but yay, National Archives. Moving on with our roll call of the census. The 1900 census was the only one that's ever asked for month and year of birth, and I'm really sorry that they didn't keep asking this, you know, in 1910, 20, 30, and 40, because people don't always give their birth years right. They'll say if they want to make them some. My great-grandfather took years off his age, you know, every year he got younger. You know, it's like, oh, you know, we have Benjamin Button for a relative here. But people either misremember the year of their birth or give it wrong, but they never misremember or give wrong the month. I mean, if I wanted to fudge my actual year of birth, I was born in 1959, I might say I was born in 1963, but I would still say it was December. I wouldn't change that. So the month is really helpful, and it helps you with identifying those people. It was also the first to ask how many children each woman had born, not just how many children they had, but how many she had given birth to, and of those, how many were now living. So if it says 9 and 6, you know that there are 3 children who died sometime in the couple decades before, likely, and so that means you got to go look for those records. There's probably not going to be actual death records. They weren't really required at this time for most places, but churches are famous for having kept birth, death, and marriage records, back into infinity. So you can figure out what church they were going to, and just see if those church records. Ancestry has a lot of church records. So does Family Search, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. So. This one's also the first to ask about the citizenship status. That's really helpful if you're like me. All 8 of my great-grandparents came from Europe around this time period. So, it's helpful for me to know when they said they first arrived. So that helped me track down their passenger list. In 1903, they created a Census Bureau, that's charged with basically administering the census. Took it away from those marshals. And in 1910, they once again asked another question about naturalization, because this was important. The United States was growing very quickly, and most of the growth was from people who were born elsewhere. It also asked again about Civil War status, whether the person had fought in the Civil War. That's a very important census if you have potential or actual Civil War ancestors you're researching. 1920, once again getting at that foreign-born people, and it asked for the year of naturalization, which can be helpful in tracking down when they applied for citizenship and when it was granted. That could be a process that took several years. 1930 was the only one that ever asked age at first marriage, and that actually isn't as trivial as it might sound, because you could have let's say the husband and the wife were both 40 years old, and he says that he was 20 at first marriage and she says she was 25, and you're going, what? But what it means, how I would interpret that, is he was married before. This is his second wife. So then that tells you need to go look for a marriage record or something like that. And 1930, they asked a question that everyone seems to find really amusing, whether the household possessed a radio. It's not a stupid question. The federal government learned 2 very, very important things from this. First of all, they learned if the president were to, say, want to give some fireside chats and speak to the nation, how many households could listen in? Now, radios at this time were not little transistors. Transistors weren't invented till the 1950s, and they didn't really become available till the 60s. These were gigantic radios. Bill Cosby does this hilarious routine about these giant Philco radios with their 287 knobs that no one understood. But these were giant things. They were pieces of furniture, really. So a household that could have a radio, this told the federal government how many households had disposable income for luxury items. This wasn't putting food on the table. This wasn't clothing their children. You didn't need a radio to live. But if 90% of the households, I don't actually remember how many households had a radio, but that told them that people in the U.S. were actually, not so bad off. And in 1940, as Rosemary said, the last one that was released, it asked the interesting question of where people had lived 5 years previously, because, the United States has always been a nation of people on the move, and this census really captured that. And you would be surprised when you see that, how many people say they lived in a different state or a different city. And it also asked what was the highest level of school completed. And this one for me really kind of came as a surprise. I started researching my family before the 1940 census was released, and I was asking everybody and trying to figure out where my dad's parents, my grandparents, had gone to high school. And I found out from when the 1940 census came out that they had not gone to high school. So not that I care, I just wanted to know. There's one final thing I want to say about the 1940 census. It's the only one so far that indicates who in the household gave the information to the census taker. You're looking for like an asterisk or a little plus sign or a little X or a check mark or something to just indicate that this was the person I talked to. And I got an example for you. This is the first census my father appears in. His parents, Russell Penavaria Sr. and Teresa, his mother, Teresa Lacera Penavaria, and there's my dad, little Russell Jr., and he's, I think, 5 or 6 years old at the time. Well, that arrow is pointing to the X that the enumerator put next to my grandmother's name to show that she was the one who gave the information for the family. And if you look over a bit, you can see what I was talking about. That last column that's showing there, the next to last column, shows that Teresa went through 8th grade and Russell Sr. went through 7th grade. Now, I have to say, the thing about who gave the information is really important when you're thinking about analyzing these original documents for the proof and evidence that they offer you. When Teresa says that she went to 8th grade only, I accept that. I don't need any further proof that that's how far she went in school. But it was Teresa who said that Russell went to 7th grade. She didn't know him when he was in 7th grade. She met him when he was 29. She might actually have gotten that wrong. I mean, think about it this way. My grandmother was not expecting the enumerator to come to the door that day. You know, she was at home. She had the gravy on. The doorbell ring. She's answering these questions thinking, you know, scram, buddy, I need to get back to my pasta. And she may have just said that, I don't know, 7th grade, you know, like that. I don't know that. So you gotta think about what these documents are telling you, what kind of proof, well, they're kind of more like the level of proof that they offer.
Okay, here is a new area of searching that you might not have thought about. Source from the states. State censuses were taken, sometimes regional censuses were taken, that are not reported in the Bureau of the Census originally. They are now. But if you go to that website from census.gov, you will be able to see which census were taken and when and where. For instance, here's our neighbors. Notice Kentucky, no state census records exist. However, if you look at Indiana and Tennessee, remember the 1890 census is gone. They took a census, Tennessee, in 1891, so you can get Tennessee data that is missing for all time because of the 1890 census destruction. Indiana's even better. They took a census in 1889 and again in 1901. Just marvelous. West Virginia, remember, was not a state until 1861, but both it and Kentucky were part of Virginia in the early days. So Virginia did colonial censuses in the late 18th century. Good sources. But go to that website and it will tell you which ones are available for you. Okay, so how can you access census records? Well,
excuse me, Rosemary, the question was, can we include the link to the state censuses? That was on the slide just 2 slides ago. So everybody gets a copy of this as a PDF. So that link is on the slide that Rosemary just talked about.
Yeah. Right before this one,
yeah, right there.
There's the source for the state censuses. Thank you for the question. Okay, so accessing census records. Our friends at Ancestry.com pay for subscription service. Gives you access to the U.S. Census records. They are fabulous, but you pay for it. Remember Mad Magazine, Spy versus Spy? Well, we did an Ancestry versus Ancestry personal subscription versus library subscription. Notice at the bottom, Smithsonian Libraries does a really focused and detailed comparison of library versus personal subscriptions. We come down on the side of having your own personal subscription to Ancestry because you can upload and view family trees, you can contact other users, you can shop and create photo books and hire experts and order Ancestry DNA kits, and you can view certain other collections. If you go to the library, you can't upload your family tree. If you do, it's going to be gone when you leave. So we advocate a personal subscription in this time. Okay, Heritage Quest Online. It used to be the poor relative in the world of genealogy, but they have been partnering with Ancestry.com. Not taking over, not merging, just partnering. And Ancestry has, I'm assuming, helped them to get a new and improved interface and have more searching power. It is also a pay-for service.
Thank you, Brittany, for posting that link. I appreciate that. Okay, now moving on with how you can access the census record. So you had an Ancestry. You can certainly access it in the library, but as Rosemary said, the personal subscription just has a lot more. And listen, I really want to just clarify something. You cannot do genealogy without paying for it. There's no way you can do quality genealogy and in-depth genealogy research without shelling out. So just make this your hobby. Make it the thing that you spend your disposable income on. An Ancestry subscription isn't going to break you. It's probably about the same as a magazine subscription. So anyway, but having said that, I will now introduce you to, if you don't already know about it, a resource that is as good as Ancestry and is free.
Free.
Family Search is the website for the Family History Library, which is in Salt Lake City, and the FHL is a part of the Mormon Church. I just want to clarify, though, that signing up for a free account at Family Search is what you need to do to be able to look at and download original records. It does not turn you into a Mormon or sign you up with the Mormon Church or make you get harassed by Mormons. It's fine. I've had a free account for several years and never had any difficulties, but I do get asked that when I talk about this. So basically what I want to say about the Family History Library and Family Search is they're giving away federal, state, and international records. They're giving these away for free. All you have to do is sign up for that account, and they've got the goods. So what Ancestry charges you for, a lot of the same stuff you can get for free at Family Search. There's not a complete overlap. And my point is, you need to use both of them. Okay? There's no choice that you need to make. You need to use Ancestry and you need to use Family Search if you're going to do good genealogy research. There's just no way around it. This is just some other reasons. I love the Family History Library. It's the largest genealogy library in the world, and it's all ours. And they have millions of records on microfilms stored in a vault. And of those, they are in the process of digitizing those. And already, just millions of records on those microfilms are already available online for free. So if you don't already know about and use and recommend Family Search and the Family History Library, then I would encourage you to start doing that. Okay, moving on to our next category. What search strategies should you use when you can't find somebody? Okay, you're going to find people right away, and then there's going to be the majority of them. You're going to be like, oops, can't find these people, or you can find them in one census and not the others, and you know they must have been in the same place. It's time to start getting clever with your strategies. Before we talk about strategies, Rosemary, are going to talk about some errors that you're going to find in census records. Okay, one error that I actually didn't put in my slides because I only just thought of it yesterday was that when copying occurs, there's going to be errors. Remember I said that the 1890 census, the enumerators pages were shipped to Washington and then they were copied by someone onto, clean copies. Well, copying always results in errors. That's basically a lot of biblical scholarship is about that, about copying errors that have occurred over the thousands of years. But pretend that was actually my first category. Now I'm going to move on to errors that result from incorrect information given by the supplier. Here's a census record that absolutely baffled me for years. The arrow is pointing to my grandfather, whose name is Russell Penavaria Sr. And there he is with his parents, Nunzio Penavaria and Francesca, and his mother, Francesca, and then his siblings, the others. Well, I found this right away because miracle of miracles, the enumerator actually spelled Penavaria right. So the 1930 census was actually the first one that I found for them. And here is my grandfather listed as Rosa, daughter. And, this was long before Caitlyn Jenner took the stage, and I was still thinking then, like, what? Is my grandfather a transsexual? Because, whoa, that would blow the family's mind. Well, no, he wasn't. Here's what happened. I was able to figure this out only after my father said something in an interview I did with him, and this was just a couple of years ago. I was, pumping his memory, and one of the questions I asked him, I said, did your grandparents speak English very well? And they said, oh, no, they didn't really speak English well at all. They spoke with heavy accents, and he said, especially my grandmother. She had a really, really heavy Sicilian accent. She couldn't even say my name right. And what is his name? Russell, right? So I said, how did she say your name? And he said, she said it like Rosso. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's why that census, that's why the enumerator wrote Rosa. Because Francesca, well, they named their child Rosario, which is a good Italian name and the name of her father. But they wanted to Americanize it. So they named him Rosario and called him Russell. But she couldn't say it right. So when the guy came to the door, she said his name was Rosso. And that's how the 1930 census contained that error. And my second category is errors introduced by the person who created the record. So this is all the enumerator's fault on this one. This is my mother's grandparents who are from Croatia, okay, in 1910, Mike and Amanda Dundovich. And somehow the enumerator, the census taker, wrote down that their name was Dudandovits. And I'm like, it took me forever to find this. I was tearing my hair out trying to find this 1910 census, which was the first one that they were in. And finally, after years, I didn't search continuously for years, but it took me, a couple of years to finally develop a search technique that revealed this one. And I was so mad at him. I was like, come on, okay, so there's D's and N's and stuff, but it's not Dundovich. What Dudandovits is actually more complicated than Dundovich. So I don't know what that guy was thinking, but he made my life pretty difficult for a while. So that's an error that was introduced by the person, because obviously, I think it was probably my great-grandmother Amanda who gave her name. Obviously, she knew how to say Dundovich. I mean, she did not say Dudandovits. He or she, the enumerators, there were some females, they were the ones that made that error. Okay, I need to take a brief detour. I just said that my category 2 was errors made by the person who created the record, and specifically about the name. So what you had there was a census taker who heard a name and wrote it down wrong, okay? He mangled my great-grandparents' last name and wrote it down incorrectly. Now that did not change their name because they knew their name was Dundovich, and it remained that. It's just that the census was hard to find. A lot of you have heard the idea that people's names were changed at Ellis Island. Some of you might even remember that Rosemary and I did an entire presentation about this. I think it was last year or maybe the year before that. I can't remember. But I want to tell you just really briefly what really happened. Now, Rosemary very kindly allowed me to have 2 slides in the middle of our presentation, so please bear with me. The thing that people think happened at Ellis Island that was really happening with the census, where names were written down wrong, did not happen. So my slide number 1 that I've been given is nobody's name was changed at Ellis Island. Anybody who wants to be convinced of this can write to us and we will send you a PDF of our presentation, or even better, come to Bowling Green and ask us out to lunch, and we will be happy to tell you the whole story. I have bent many people's ear about this. The reason nobody's name was changed at Ellis Island was because they weren't taking names. The names were already written down on big sheets of paper that came across the ocean with the passengers and was handed in by the captain of the ship to the officials who are, you can see in this picture, sitting at the desks. Okay, so when the officials asked people their names, they were doing so they could check the names off on the manifest. People's names were not recorded at Ellis Island, so there's no way they could have been recorded incorrectly. And it's ridiculous to think that somehow a person's name, which they know perfectly well, could somehow follow them from the few hours they spent at this immigration point. They left Ellis Island and went on to be, productive Americans, and they knew what their name was. There was no way for the officials to give them a little piece of paper saying, here's your new name, don't forget it, So if you ever hear anyone say something about names were changed or written down wrong at Ellis Island, would you please just give them my email and I will convince them otherwise. Okay, my 2 slides are up. Go.
Okay. Another error category here is created by the person who indexed the record. Okay, so here's an example. Surname and first name reversed by the indexer. Now, this may give you a little puzzlement for the first time you look at Faso Gaetano and Nasca Nunzio and Matucci Fabio.
Great names.
Great names, all Pinevaria relatives, by the way. But surely Anthony Zappia is not Zappia Anthony. In 1930 he was. So be sure to reverse the names when you search, even if it doesn't sound logical. It could be the way it happened. Fourth category. Those of you with such sensitivity, please be advised. Turn away from the screen. Oh, here is the White House garage.
Not now.
Not now, not now. Years ago, notice that these bookcases probably may be made in junior high shop, falling down, the tire leaning against precious, irreplaceable records, many records lying in grease on a cement floor, ruining. Oh, this is also bad. Mold or mildew got to this one, and it's obliterating the information. There's tears at the fold of the page. Oh, it gets worse, folks.
Yeah.
A tear in the page that
Cut. It looks like it's cut with scissors.
Yeah, and no one will know what's in there. Tape. Please don't try to repair anything with Scotch tape. This is what happens after it ages. It ruins your stuff, and if you try to remove it, it takes the names with it. So then binding troubles. If some more Pinevarias here. If Kath hadn't known the names of these relatives, Laverne, George, Arlene, and Gerard, they would be gone. They would be lost.
Yeah. I mean, I found them because it said Lucera, but I mean, I couldn't read their first names because somebody cut the edge of it in order to bind this census.
That's right. And this, I mean, the Dead Sea Scrolls has nothing on the U.S. Census. Here, we can't tell if Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene or not. And worse things with the census.
Yeah.
So it's awful to see. Oh.
Okay, so we're going to talk to you now about how you can work around some of those problems. If it's been obliterated, sorry, you're out of luck. But most people are listed in the census. So if you can't find somebody, then you have to keep searching. Before you admit defeat on this, you really need to put a number of hours into it using some of these strategies. Most people are in the census. It's not a really good idea to conclude that they just somehow got left out. The enumerators worked very hard, and the federal government was extremely organized about this. And the vast majority of people are in the census, but their names might be written wrong, as we said, and the name might have been obliterated. So we want to try to work around some of those problems. The first idea, most librarians know about these, you need to use what are called wildcard characters or truncation symbols. A question mark will replace a single letter, and an asterisk will replace a group of letters, okay? So I was doing some research for a friend, and the family name I was researching was Galbraith, and I discovered that there's like a dozen different ways, legitimate different spellings of this name. They're not misspellings. This is just the way people spelled them over the years. So I developed that truncation search to kind of just pull them all up so I could look at them. So truncation or wildcard symbols are your friends. You also want to think in terms of using your search terms very, very wisely and cautiously, okay? So if the record you want does not contain the information you happen to know, don't put that in the search box. So just as an example, let's say you're looking for the census record for 1910 that shows John McKay, who was born in Philadelphia in 1904. So in the ancestry page or whatever, you're going to see it's a blank. It says birthplace. Well, if you just kind of cheerfully write Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in there, it's going to retrieve 0 because the census does not list cities. It lists only states and countries. And I wouldn't even go there with the countries because country names have shifted. And as Rosemary explained, states have shifted, in terms of, what they were part of. Like my great-grandparents, the Croatian people were Croatian from what we now call Croatia, but on all the censuses, their birthplace is listed as either Austria or Hungary or Austria-Hungary. And in one case, it was just listed as Europe, which, is like super non-helpful. So my point is, you must know what's in the record you are searching for and look at how they put the information, then go do your search. So if you are looking for census records, make sure you know how those answers got phrased when the people gave the information. Okay, and you want to also think in terms of just look beyond the name. Stop searching for the person by name using the name as you know it. Just stop doing that if you can't find it, and then just kind of work around it. So you pull up all the records for males born in Kentucky around 1902, and their mother was named Emily. You can do this in Ancestry and Family Search. You have to be creative, kind of searching around the name. The names were the most mutable thing of all the census information. They were the things most likely to get miswritten or misheard and misunderstood or put in reverse order or something like that.
Right. So if you have any of these names in your family, please be grateful. Winifred, Loretta, Merton, Gertrude, Henry, Florence, Ephraim, and our favorite, Epifanio.
That's a great name.
Great name. Also, be aware that sometimes they used abbreviations for first names. We all know JAS is James and WM is William, but sometimes the indexers didn't use the full name. They actually used JAS or WM or GEO or another one. Elizabeth may be in there and any of these other forms. So think about how, somebody asks you a question, what's your name? You may say, well, it's Betty, and, maybe it's Elizabeth.
Hi, Betty.
Hi, Betty. So anyhow, take a look at abbreviations also, because they were not necessarily transliterated into the full name. Again, reversing the fields. James Smith could come in as Smith James. So try that. It works sometimes. Also, indexers for Ancestry and indexers for Family Search are not the same people. They were indexed as separate projects. So what the people did in Ancestry does not necessarily match what Family Search indexers did. So be aware that using one set of search terms in one will not automatically get you results in the other.
And I think the Heritage Quest census records were indexed in yet a third separate project. So it's always worth checking these multiple sources.
That's right, and multiple ways of searching.
Yeah.
Like we just said. Okay, now this is from Ancestry.com. One nice thing is you can browse the whole neighborhood. Notice down there where the pink circle is, you can see who lived next door to the folks that you find. You can find out what the neighborhood looked like. And often relatives stayed in the same neighborhood. They were like 2 houses down. So this is something good to remember. Okay, if that census geography icon looks crazy, it's because census geography is crazy.
That's how Rosemary looked when I asked her to explain census geography to me a couple years ago.
Well, yeah. Partly it's because census has made up its own geography. It does not follow the boundaries set by normal geographers. They use blocks and tracts and wards and enumeration districts, and they are not the same from one time to another time. So, it's tough. Here's Ward 7 of 1900 census in Illinois, in Chicago, and this you're not going to find on any map. It's what this census did. Here's Grayson County, a place we were just visiting recently, and this does not correspond to the boundaries of the real Grayson County.
So that's a ward map. I think it's from a ward map. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay, one final census tool that I want to focus on here. If you don't already know about this, it's really useful. Now, Rosemary said that you want to browse the neighborhoods, and that is a really super helpful thing to do. As Amy said, you can find whole groups of people used to live closer to each other than they do now. So down the street there's going to be this group of cousins, this aunt and uncle, the grandparents. But how do you get to the right record set? I mean, the census, there's like a billion page. That's not an accurate number. I just made that up. There's so many pages. You can't look through all of them. Well, what you need to do is find the right ward and the right enumeration district for that census year, because the boundaries do alter. And this website right here is a great place to go for help with finding the enumeration district you need to locate so you can look at that batch of records. So the batch of records, say for the 1940 census, the enumeration district that your people you're looking for lived in is going to be about 30 to 40 pages. So you want to find that and just look through all of them. Now, Steve Morse, I consider him a genealogy god, because he made it so much easier to find these enumeration districts, and he also did some really great useful search tools for doing Ellis Island records and Castle Garden records that I have found very useful. So he doesn't have the records themselves. He's a computer science guy, so he does these tools, but he does link. If you can find the enumeration district by you put in the address where your people live. So if you know where people lived, at least for the 1940 and I think the 1930, you can get those EDs. He's always adding in the data for the earlier ones. Okay, what other resources are available to you in doing census research? This is just kind of a miscellaneous collection of things that we have used. I really like the genealogy section of about.com that's written by Kimberly Powell. She is great at explaining, like, if you're like, what the heck is a slave schedule, and what are these things, what are the what are the agricultural schedules? Yes, they have not made architectural schedules in some time. What are these things? What does it mean? How do I get to them? She's really, really great at explaining all sorts of stuff like that. Where do I start researching, let's say you want to do international, you want to say, you have relatives that came from Scotland or England. How do you get to Irish and English and Scottish censuses? Those are available, by the way, through the Family History Library. I have looked at the Scottish censuses, and they're really, really good. They're very well done. All of them have been digitized, all the ones that still exist. There were some courthouse fires in Ireland that destroyed a number of the census years. But Kimberly's really good at explaining kind of where you start with doing something if you can't. This is a good thing for beginners. Another thing that I want to tell you about is I'm encouraging you to think about obtaining these records. You want to obtain the original records, not obviously the original, but a scan of it or a printout, but a scan is preferable. You want to work with the digital files as much as possible, because you just get overwhelmed by the paper. But you got to do something with these images. When you download them, they're like crooked and they're dark and there's a lot of background stuff, showing the scanner. So this is a free and wonderful and easy to use image manipulator. And all the images that you've seen on this and all my presentations I did with IrfanView, like I wrote the words free download and made an arrow, made an arrow, and all the circles and all the things I did, that's what I did it with. Picasa is another image viewer you can work with. What's the other one? Photoshop. But you have to pay for Photoshop. IrfanView is simple and easy to use, and I love it, so I can't give it a higher recommendation, and I do not work for the guy who invented it. Now, this is what I can do in IrfanView. I got a page that was faded because it was in pencil, and I adjusted the contrast. I basically made the dark places darker and the light places lighter, and voila, we have the words suddenly appearing now, the penciled-in words, because it's just a contrast adjustment. So you can adjust contrast, you can adjust color, and color saturation to do that. This is also what I do with IrfanView with my records. I downloaded that. That was from the Florida State Census, right? It looks, it's like, it's crooked and it's got a lot of, it's like it was just basically put on an overhead scanner and, they shot the picture. So I cropped it, and I lightened it, and I clarified it, and I can circle stuff on it, and I can write on it. I can make a margin that tells me where I got this. You can do a whole lot of things with IRFN views, so I highly recommend that. And we're done.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, you didn't see it. We just high-fived. Over to you, Charlie.
Okay, thank you guys. It sounded like you were racing to the end there.
Well, we want to leave room for questions.
Well,
I always
appreciate that. You guys go ahead and chat in questions. I'm going to go ahead and change the screen over to give everybody a chance to download the slides.
Yeah, I have a tendency to ad lib a lot, so I was, trying to make sure we timed it out to leave, good 8-10 minutes for questions, and I was like, whoops, not going to make it.
Perfect timing, perfect timing. The instructions on downloading the PDF are there in the slides on the top portion of the screen, and the downloads pod is in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So if you have trouble with that, please chat in and I'll help you out. Otherwise, we'll just hang out for a couple minutes. I'm hoping someone's chatting in questions. We see that multiple people are typing. So
well, thank you. I appreciate you saying it was helpful. That's the most important thing to us. I mean, of course, I also want you to think I'm funny. I don't know about Rosemary, but we are trying to be helpful. We do this for our job. This is something that we are supposed to do, and we want to do it well. But, we can answer questions now or later. If somebody thinks of something later, we're happy to take questions. Our email's right there on our PDF, and we're all, and especially if you're interested in that Ellis Island stuff, honestly, it's my, I don't know, is it my mission?
Yes,
it is. I'm on a mission to change the entire country's understanding of this. I may have taken on a bit too much. Rosemary thinks so, but kindly does not say so. But yeah. I know. I just want to tell you that this idea of that, it actually kind of got started before, but it became very popular in the mid-'70s with The Godfather. The Godfather 2, there's a whole scene where little Vito Andolini goes to Ellis Island, and the stupid official thinks his name is Vito Corleone because the guy says his name was Vito Andolini from Corleone. So yeah, curse you, Godfather. Who houses birth and death records?
Well, where?
It depends. That's
it
a good answer. It depends on the state. Most of the time, locally, more so than at a state level, but the older ones might be at the state level, like they might be in the state capital. I know in Pennsylvania, the death records before 1960 are in Harrisburg at the state capital, but later ones are in the counties.
Okay. Yeah. In Kentucky, there is a Bureau of Vital Records. Mm-hmm. They are not online, so you have to pay to get the record. If you go to ky.gov, look up vital records, and they can tell you. Now, Family Search is good for some of those, but if it's a recent record, if it's since 1950, because that census is not out yet, then you'll have to go to the Bureau itself.
I would actually just go to Google, type birth records, and the name of the county where they occurred, and that should get you to the official county government's page that will give you instructions and directions how to do it.
Yeah, they're held at the state level.
Oh, thanks, Charlie. That's good. That's good. So they've got the KDLA thing has the earlier ones. Okay, so it's going to vary with the state. It's going to vary, in terms of like some are here, some are there. Right. Yeah. And it was much before 1900. Birth and death records really weren't required by municipalities. You're just lucky if you can get them before that. But churches, I just want to remind you again, churches have always kept track of these things, and they are really good resources. So while I appreciate the government records more than most people, but not more than Rosemary, the church records many are available on Ancestry and Family Search. And sometimes Family Search is not going to have them digitized. You can get the microfilms from the Family History Library and have them sent to you locally. Anybody wants to learn how to do that, I'm happy to tell them. How do you find someone's church? That's tricky.
Yes.
Well, if you're me, everybody's Catholic, end of story.
Well, I found a bunch. I even found a Methodist heritage on Find a Grave. Mm-hmm. If you see where they're buried.
Or in the obituary.
You see who the minister was that was officiating. Then you can tell that person was probably from that church.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of cemeteries are one faith only. So
That's
yeah,
right.
you look on the death certificate, it says where they're buried. You know, it says something Episcopal Church Cemetery.
Yeah.
Well, there's your answer.
Catholics are buried in Catholic cemeteries for the most part. Not Protestants in Catholic cemeteries.
Yeah.
Jewish families are buried in Jewish cemeteries,
Right.
and so forth.
So basically, not all Catholic people are buried in Catholic cemeteries, but you can be pretty sure that everyone buried in a Catholic or Jewish or whatever cemetery is a member of that faith, because you have to, now, I don't know, prove it, but you have to get some kind of justification for being buried there.
That's right.
So that was a really good question. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. You know, Amy, I wanted to say, when you said good idea, I wanted to say, like God says in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, of course it's a good idea. I didn't say it, though, did I?
No, you didn't. You were restrained, I'm happy to say.
I'm very restrained today.
Almost.
All right, Charlie.
Sorry, just giving you a hard time there.
I know, that's okay. Rosemary gives me a harder time than anybody here could give me. We do a whole presentation where we talk about newspapers, which is maybe one we should do for you, which I don't know if we've done, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah. But we go through all these articles where all these felons in my family have gotten in the newspapers, and she really just goes to town on that. Oh, another Cannavaro who ended up in jail, yes.
Well, Catherine's a good sport.
Well, if I'm going to use examples of your relatives appearing in newspapers when they did something bad, I felt like, well, I can only really use mine with any justification. I can't be like, look at Rosemary's uncle, I didn't think that was fair, even though, well, no, let's not go there.
They're not in there. They're not in there.
All right. Well, no more questions. We're good. It's all on tap here or, later. Later's fine.
It looks like the questions have slowed down, so I wanted to remind everybody that this was recorded, and it will be posted on our archive webinars page, hopefully within just a couple of days. So check back for that if you'd like to review any information or share it with your colleagues, share it with your patrons for sure. If they need help finding census records as well, it's not just limited to library staff. And
we're very open source about our stuff, as long as it doesn't change, that's fine. Because it's perfect. Kidding.
That's a good idea, Charlene. So she'll be sharing this webinar, the recording, with her genealogy meetup.
Hey, what's a genealogy meetup? Can we go? Are we invited?
That's a good question. Charlene's you're in Eastern Kentucky, aren't you? So that might be quite a drive.
Yeah, well, we drive. We were just up in Grayson County with Betty, talking to some of the people up there. Really nice group of people interested in doing some research. And we've traveled. We've gone to Henderson Public Library. So we'll take our show on the road, people. This is our job, and if we get to do something like this, it means we don't have to do other work that we.
In meetings.
That is interesting. Oh, sorry, we can't go to that meeting because we have to go to such and such county.
Yeah. Road trip.
Road trip.
Yeah.
We'll see what Charlene says.
Genealogy Roadshow. Did someone already use that title? Dang
No.
It. Yeah? No, I think they did.
No.
I think it's a TV show. Genealogy. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, I don't think they used it.
Well, there's Antiques Roadshow. I think there is a
Antiques
Genealogy
Roadshow. Yeah, but
okay, if that's not an actual TV show, I said it first, and we're going to start our own
genealogy meetup, third Friday. Okay, where?
Yeah, thanks, Betty.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Genealogy Roadshow taken. I'll think of something else.
Oh.
Dang it. All right, well, that's good. Is this far away from us here? We're in Bowling Green. I love watching this scroll of all these comments. It's so much fun. Especially since I can say something, I don't have to type it. Power.
Yeah.
I told you it was a genealogy road show or road trip or something. I've never seen it.
Oh.
Far
Charlie.
Eastern. Oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah, I think she's in Pike County, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we won't be there this time. We could phone in, though. I mean, if you could figure out some way to do that, we'd be happy to come to it virtually.
Yeah.
If we could figure that out. We'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, Skype is a great option
Mhm.
most of the time.
And donuts. What a wonderful combination. I love them
Right.
both.
Yeah.
7 hours.
7 hours.
That's a bit of a hike. Because it usually ends up being longer for me because I always get lost. So we see a lot of the countryside.
Mhm.
I try to put a positive spin on my poor sense of direction.
The scenic route.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, it's 2 o'clock. I think that's the witching hour. Pumpkin,
That's it.
carriage, etc.
That's right. Thank you so much, Katherine and Rosemary. We appreciate you sharing all of this with us again, sharing your time and your knowledge.
All right. It's our
Always
pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you
See you
again.
next time.